Well, it turns out that the Zack Snyder and James Gunn picture from last week didn't mean jack shit, just as I predicted. And instead of some earth-shattering announcement, what we got instead was some not-so-interesting news about the DCU. James Gunn and Peter Safran are never beating these MCU 2.0 allegations, are they? Let's discuss.
I watch so you don't have to.
All I'm offering is the truth, nothing more.
So in typical DCU fashion, we got a series of updates recently that, if I'm being totally honest, somehow made me even less interested in this reboot than I already was. Listen, I understand the thought process behind it. From WB's perspective, they've been playing catch-up for years thanks to their own incompetence. So them fast-tracking an entire DC universe is not all that surprising to me. But I'd be lying if I said it didn't feel a little bit premature. In addition to them jumping the gun, pun intended, these announcements very much reinforce a lot of the concerns I have about the DCU already. So what the hell, let's go through some of them, I'll give my opinion, and I'm sure the comments will be civil.
Boo this man!
First off, we got a little bit more details on DC's release schedule as they start to roll out more and more projects. Their goal, apparently, is to release 7 projects a year. 2 live-action films, 1 animated film, 2 live-action shows, and 2 animated series. There is a plan in place over the next 6 years that includes an Avengers Endgame-style culmination. Their words, not mine. Now, if we ignore the fact that they are literally admitting to structuring everything the exact same way Marvel does, I have to ask the question, wouldn't it make more sense to see how your first movie is received by audiences and critics before you dive headfirst into a 6-year plan? I mean, DC and WB have had a hard enough time making one decent movie in recent years. And now we're already talking about 2 movies per year over the next 6 years on top of other projects, and the first one hasn't even been released yet. And no, I'm not counting Creature Commandos.
No, don't like that.
Now, I'm all for them having a plan and sticking to it, obviously. That's something that WB and DC has shown to be not very good at, if we are being honest. But this is definitely starting to feel like they are counting their chickens before they hatch. Plus, if you consider some of the movies that are rumored to be down the pipeline, I don't know, it just seems like it's going to be very hard for them to stick to any kind of plan when a lot of these projects feel very random. A Clayface movie, a Bane and Deathstroke movie? Now, I'm not necessarily against those ideas per se, but it does seem kind of strange that movies like that will be crucial while building this 6-year-long story that culminates in a big event film. Plus, I just think that this is a bit too much. I mean, people are already getting burnt out on the genre as we speak. And now you're going to give us 7 more comic book projects a year, and that's on top of whatever the MCU is doing also. It feels like overkill.
Stop it!
We did get some information about a handful of projects that have faced setbacks, like script issues, as well as showrunners leaving the project. And the projects that were mentioned were Waller, Booster Gold, and The Authority. 3 projects that I can honestly say as a longtime DC fan that I couldn't give a single f*** about. Now, I apologize to the Booster Gold and Authority aficionados out there, but again, does it not seem weird that we're talking about projects like this before we even have a definitive Batman or Wonder Woman established for this universe? We also got a little update on the Batman Brave and the Bold project. The script is currently being written, James Gunn himself is working closely with the writer, the story follows Batman and his son, Damian, and Andy Muschietti will be the first one to see the script when it's done. I'm getting flashbacks of the Flash movie debacle all over again.
Talk to you soon, okay? Bye!
Now, I understand that a writer, producer, and potential director being involved in these situations is pretty common. But it doesn't give me a ton of hope when I haven't been all that impressed with the work of at least 2 of the people involved here. I mean, Andy Muschietti alone should not be allowed anywhere near anything Batman related ever again. after what he did to Michael Keaton and Batfleck. I'm not surprised that they're going the Damian Wayne route either. I mean, he's an edgy little bastard. That's pretty much right up James Gunn's alley, and I'm sure debauchery will ensue. And then we have an interesting little tidbit of information about James Gunn's Superman movie. This movie will reportedly have a lot of humor. Let me put on my surprised face. Now, the shills are already coming out to defend this news, even if they don't understand what people's actual complaints about it are. Like Joe here, who says, why are we acting like this is a bad thing? 99% of comic book movies have humor in them. What's wrong if Superman does? Well, I think Joe is forgetting one thing. 90% of the 99% of comic book movies that have humor in them usually end up sucking.
Had you ever heard of the healing power of laughter?
What these people don't seem to understand is that humor is fine. Humor can be used as an effective tool to make for a much more entertaining experience. But it all has to do with how that humor is ultimately used. Now, obviously, we don't know how it will be used in Superman just yet. But if we take into consideration James Gunn's track record, I think we can make an educated guess. I mean, the guy is pretty much a master at cringe humor that undermines the emotional core of most of his films. So if we are playing the odds, how exactly do you think this is going to go? And make no mistake about it, if James Gunn resorts to his typical brand of humor, that would not be appropriate for a Superman movie. You see, a light-hearted and hopeful tone is not the same as including cringe humor, and we need to understand the difference. So what we have here is a packed release schedule filled with movies and shows that I'm not 100% sure is going to resonate with audiences in the way that they think it's going to. We have a somewhat questionable creative process when it comes to putting these projects together, and I'm not exactly excited about most of the people involved already. And we already have confirmation that the very first film in this universe will include a lot of humor. I'm sorry, but the DCU still has a very MCU 2.0 feel to it.
That makes sense.
But I guess it makes sense. That's why WB went out and got themselves a Marvel guy, because this is exactly the type of comic book properties that they've wanted for so long. And that's just not interesting to someone like myself who values variety over formula. Now, that's not to say that everything in the DCU sounds like a disaster. I still have an interest in the Lantern series. I have a morbid curiosity about how the Clayface project is going to go, even if that project doesn't necessarily make sense right now. But overall, this universe does feel kind of random and convoluted to me already. And the sheer amount of projects that are already being developed has me feeling a bit numb to it as someone who values quality over quantity.
Y'all be cool. Right on.